I went to a remote cabin last month. I needed inspiration. I thought stepping away from distractions would help. The cabin was rustic. It creaked with every step. The metal roof groaned in the wind. I've never minded being alone, but I can't stop thinking about what happened next. The first few nights passed quietly. I sat at the small table, sketching in my notebook, but nothing flowed. On the third night, I glanced out the window. There was a strange glow above the trees. My tired eyes could have been playing tricks on me. I shook my head and tried to focus, but that glow was like a magnet, pulling my attention. I stepped outside, the cold air hitting me hard. The light was brighter than anything I'd ever seen. It flickered in odd patterns. I felt like I needed to capture it. My heart raced as I thought about drawing it. As I started to sketch, I realized it felt like the light wanted me to draw it, like it fed on my creativity. The sounds from the woods became almost haunting. I could hear branches snapping and whispers that faded when I turned to look. My hands shook while I tried to create. The sketches were chaotic. I felt eyes on me, watching from the trees. The more I worked, the harder it was to concentrate. My mind started to feel unsteady. On the fifth night, everything fell silent. It felt wrong. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, trying to calm my racing heart. I thought I was losing it. Maybe I was just too isolated. But deep down, I knew something else was at play. I drew the light the best I could, but it shifted and danced above me. Suddenly, I heard rustling outside. I turned, and my pulse raced. The woods were empty, or at least they seemed that way. Jenna. I heard a voice whisper like it was carried by the wind. I froze. Who was calling my name? I stumbled back, feeling cold fear wrap around me. Was it connected to the light? I had to know what it was. But the shadows deepened, and I felt a darkness surrounding me. I remembered my sketches. I had poured my energy, my creativity into them. Part of me wondered if that light was tied to it all. My existence, my thoughts. Every night blended into the next. I found myself outside more, drawn to that otherworldly glow. I hoped for answers, but all I found was a creeping dread. The more I drew, the more it felt like I was losing pieces of myself. I felt weaker. I didn't know how I could stop this. Now as I sit in this chair, I can still see that strange light illuminating the treetops. I wonder if it's still watching, still waiting for me to give more of myself. Am I part of it now? I can't shake the feeling that I may never get away. How long until it takes everything from me? The next day, the glow above the treetops was even brighter. I had hardly rested. Sleep felt like a distant memory, overtaken by fear and curiosity. I forced myself to sketch again, hoping to capture its essence before it slipped away like the fog in the morning. After several failed attempts, I finally stood up, frustrated. I needed to reposition myself, find a different angle. I stepped closer to the edge of the woods. The light pulsed, resonating with a power I couldn't comprehend. It drew me in again, and I reluctantly moved toward it. Then I heard it, a different sound this time. Not just rustling, but what felt like footsteps crunching through the leaves. I spun around, heart pounding. I saw nothing. The trees stood tall and still. My stomach twisted. Was I imagining things again? I took a deep breath and turned back to the light. It was brighter than ever, wrapping itself around my senses. I hesitated, aware that I was teetering on the line between fascination and obsession. But curiosity had its claws in me, digging deep. Suddenly, I stumbled. My foot caught on a root and I fell forward. My notebook slipped from my hands and landed open on the ground. I looked down, feeling panic rise. My latest sketches had come alive in a way that made my heart race. They weren't just images anymore. They were an ominous collection of shapes and figures that didn't exist in the real world. Dark forms lingered in the corners of the pages, whispering stories I couldn't understand. That's when I noticed something else. Among the chaotic lines and strokes, a small note appeared written in my own handwriting. "It's your turn." I felt bile rise in my throat. What did this mean? My heart raced as I looked towards the glow, suddenly feeling manipulated. I scrambled to gather my notebook and pen. I had to get away from here. The cabin, once a haven, now felt like a trap. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of something moving just beyond the light. My eyes widened. There was a figure standing at the edge of the trees, its shape indistinct but undeniably humanoid. Jenna. It whispered again, closer this time, more urgent. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I took a step back, instinct urging me to flee. But I stood frozen, unable to look away as the figure began to step into the light. In that moment, something shifted in the air. The glow intensified, the world around me dimming for a second. I turned and ran back to the cabin, slamming the door behind me. I locked it tight, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. The light flickered through the windows, pulsing in tandem with my racing heart. I sank to the floor, pressing my back against the wall. I could feel it watching me, waiting for me to draw again, waiting for my next move. Was the figure tied to the light? Were they one and the same? My mind raced with questions and fears. I needed answers, but at what cost? I realized then that my isolation was my prison, and whatever force was out there would not let me go easily. This was only the beginning. I had to confront the truth sooner or later, but I was terrified of what that truth might reveal. I stayed in the cabin for what felt like hours. The light continued to pulse, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was hovering just out of reach. Eventually, I forced myself to stand. I needed to investigate, to know what I was dealing with. Cautiously, I approached the front door. I peered through the window, my stomach churning with anxiety. The figure was gone. I inhaled, relieved but still on edge. I was aware enough of my surroundings to know I couldn't either stay inside or leave without knowing the truth. I grabbed my notebook and flipped through the strange sketches again. The note, "It's your turn," stuck in my mind. What did it mean? I had to face whatever this was, and drawing had always been my way of coping. Maybe it could help me unlock the source of what haunted me. Sitting at the table, I drew a rough outline of the light as I had seen it the day before, glowing, pulsating, alive. The shapes I sketched were uncontrolled, almost chaotic. But as I meticulously filled in the details, I felt a strange energy overflow around me. Just then, a loud crash erupted outside. I jumped, my heart racing. I rushed to the window and saw branches snapping. Something had disturbed the foliage, and a low grumbling noise filled the air. I focused my attention, straining to get a glimpse of what was outside. That's when I saw it. A bulky, dark silhouette moving among the trees, much larger than the figure I had seen before. It moved slowly, almost deliberately, as if it were searching for something. Panic rose in me again, and I backed away from the window, my breath catching in my throat. My hands trembled as I gripped my notebook and pen. Would it be the same as before? Would my drawing somehow draw it near, just like I felt the light had drawn me? The thought chilled me. But curiosity and fear clashed inside me like a storm. In a moment of reckless bravery, I opened the door just a crack. The outside air was heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else I couldn't place. Something metallic and sharp. I peered out, and my eyes widened. The silhouette halted, turning its head toward the cabin. Just as I was about to slam the door shut, I saw its eyes, deep and unnatural, glowing faintly in the dusk. It took a step forward, and a shiver ran down my spine. My instinct screamed that I should retreat inside, but I knew I couldn't. My answer was out there waiting. As if sensing my presence, the figure kept moving, closer now, a slow, deliberate approach. I felt frozen, unable to commit to running or standing still. Every moment felt like an eternity. Then it happened. The light outside erupted, flooding the trees with a brilliant glow that momentarily blinded me. I staggered back, tripping over the threshold and crashing to the ground. What had I done? I blinked away the bright spots in my vision and glanced back toward the enclosure just in time to see it. The figure was gone, but the glow expanded, enveloping the cabin, pulsating with a fierce intensity that reverberated in my chest. What was happening? As I scrambled to my feet, I knew one thing. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Whatever answer awaited me, it was coming for me now. The light pulsed around me, bright enough to split the night into a surreal dream. I stood there, heart racing, trying to steady my breath. My instincts screamed at me to retreat, but my curiosity clung to me like a weight. I stepped outside, urged by something I couldn't explain. The ground felt cool beneath my bare feet, and each blade of grass seemed to hum with energy. My eyes darted around, scanning for movement. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and the darkness beyond the cabin felt alive with unseen eyes. As the glow continued to shine brighter, I realized I was drawn not just to it, but also to the very source it seemed to be guarding. I thought of my drawings, how they had seemed chaotic, but now they echoed the light's rhythm. I fished out my notebook and flipped to a fresh page, planning to capture what I could before it slipped away. But just as my pen hit the paper, a sound cut through the air, a deep, fashioning hiss that filled the woods around me. It sent a shiver racing down my spine. I looked up, eyes wide, and for a moment there was nothing but the weight of silence. Then, I heard it again, closer this time, like the exhale of some beast. Suddenly the light flickered, casting eerie shapes among the trees. I wondered if the figure I had seen earlier had returned. Before I could fully process my next move, I caught a glimpse of a winged shape flitting between the branches, too quick to identify. I turned my head, squinting into the fading light. I noticed something strange in the direction of the sound, a streak of something metallic gleaming against the darkness. It glimmered like a beacon, pulling me toward it. I hesitated, but curiosity drew me forward. What if this was the key? What if it was tied to the light? The moment I stepped closer, I heard rustling behind me. I whipped around, feeling the air grow heavier as if it were pushing against me. The light from the cabin pulsed more aggressively, illuminating the shadows, and that's when I saw it. A figure stepping into the glow, only partly obscured by the surrounding darkness. Just then, the light surged, and I was caught in its embrace. My heart raced, and for a second I felt weightless, as if the ground had fallen away. A flash of images rushed through my mind, brief glimpses of the strange creature, of the woods, of something vast and terrible hidden within the trees, and then it hit me. I could see things no one else had seen. I could understand what these visuals were directing me to. Suddenly, the pressing knowledge of "it's your turn" surged in my mind. Whatever was happening here, it was my responsibility to grasp it. But before I could act, the figure stepped fully into the light. My blood ran cold. It bore an uncanny resemblance to the silhouette I'd seen before, yet it felt larger, almost more defined. I recognized those unnatural, glowing eyes locked onto mine, a horrifying mix of familiarity and dread. I stumbled back, feeling the ground beneath me shift as the weight of my choice bore down. The light flickered wildly, and with each pulse, it felt as though the world was collapsing and expanding in sync. I glanced from the figure to my notebook. My pen was scrawled across the page, revealing drawings I hadn't made, yet somehow traced from a deeper knowledge. Then it whispered my name. I froze, the whisper sending a jolt through me like ice water. My name echoed softly in the night, but it wasn't the sound that terrified me. It was the urgency behind it. The figure before me took a step closer, and I could almost feel its presence pressing against the warmth of the cabin's light. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice barely escaping the lump in my throat. The glowing eyes seemed to penetrate my very thoughts, reading my fears, my doubts. They flickered with a strange intensity. Was it recognition or something darker? The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it raised a hand, revealing elongated fingers adorned with what looked like delicate markings, swirling patterns that seemed to shimmer even in the dull light. My breath hitched. Those patterns were the same as in my sketches, lines and shapes I had not intentionally drawn. "What do you want from me?" I choked out. I wanted to retreat, to bolt back into the safety of the cabin, but my feet remained rooted to the spot. It felt wrong to turn away. In that moment, the light intensified once again, and the air hummed louder, vibrating through my bones. A vision exploded in my mind, a sea of stars, vast and unfathomable. An object gliding silently through the cosmic turmoil, weaving between planets and debris like a predator stalking its prey. My heart pounded, almost in sync with the light, as dread wrapped around me like a cold storm. "Found you," the figure finally said, its voice a mix of whispers and echoes, like a memory fading but not forgotten. I didn't understand the meaning of the phrase, but I felt its weight. It was like a comet, trailing through my thoughts, carrying fragments of urgency. Before I could gather my thoughts, it stepped even closer, and the world around us shifted. The trees began to distort, twisting into shapes that loomed like sentinels over us. Reality felt thin, and the shadows stretched and warped. Then I noticed something moving behind it. A mass, dark and flowing, started to emerge from the trees, sliding into the light. Panic surged through me. I couldn't clearly see what it was, but instinct told me it was no friend. The air shifted again, heavier this time, like a storm was brewing. I took a step back, my heart racing faster than before. "Get away from me," I shouted, the fear crackling in my voice. The figure glanced over its shoulder at the approaching darkness, and then turned those eye-locked gaze back to me. "Trust me," it urged, though I didn't know if I could believe it. Another hiss tore through the air like a blade, sharper and more aggressive than before. In an instant, the shape from the trees lunged, a dark blur rushing toward us. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape, but the light pulsed one last time, blinding me as it reached out, and then everything went dark. I gasped as light flooded back into my vision. I blinked, trying to adjust my eyes, but it was still too bright. Panic gripped me as I realized I was no longer outside the cabin. I was lying on the floor, surrounded by the familiar wooden walls. The flickering fire cast long shadows, and I could hear the crackling of the logs, but the figure was gone. The oppressive weight in the room felt like a vacuum sucking all the air away. I swung my head around, looking for any sign of movement, but the cabin was empty, still, and eerily calm. The experience flitted in and out of my mind like a dream. Had it been real? My heart hammered in my chest. I felt a strange longing to understand, to know what had just happened. I wanted answers, but fear dripped thickly in my veins, cautioning me to retreat into my own safety. Then I froze as I heard it, a low growling sound, deep and resonating. It came from the direction of the door. My blood ran cold as I thought back to the dark blur that lunged at us. I crept toward the door, my ears straining. "Please be the wind," I whispered to myself, but logic told me otherwise. It had sounded too close, too purposeful. I reached for the knob, barely touching the cold metal. My hand quivered. This was a terrible idea. I took a deep breath and yanked the door open, expecting the worst. The night air hit me like a wall, sharp and biting. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first glance. The stars twinkled in the sky, and a thin fog rolled across the ground. But that growl echoed again, sending a jolt down my spine. I stepped outside, peering into the inky darkness. The woods were unnaturally silent, every sound seeming to amplify. The tangle of trees stood like guards, and I was suddenly hyper-aware of the shadows clinging to them. Where was the figure? That's when I noticed it. A small object, half buried in the dirt just outside the cabin, glinted under the starlight. My heart raced with curiosity and dread. I moved closer, kneeling down. It was a small stone, but not an ordinary stone. The markings on it were exactly like those swirling patterns I had seen on the figure's fingers. I picked it up, feeling a sudden rush of warmth course through my fingertips. It pulsed softly in my hand, a gentle beat that resonated with something deep inside me, as if it recognized me. But then, the growl came again, much closer this time. My instincts kicked in. I couldn't stay here. I clutched the stone tightly as I sprinted back into the cabin, slamming the door shut behind me. I leaned against it, my breath coming in shaky gasps. Whatever that was, whatever had found me, it was still out there. I needed to figure out what this stone meant. Questions flooded my mind. Could it protect me? Will it help me understand the figure? Before I could gather my thoughts, I heard a sharp thud against the cabin door. Fear churned in my stomach. This wasn't over. I turned toward the window, trying to catch a glimpse of whatever lurked outside. My mind raced as I faced an uncertain future. Something was coming for me, and I had to be ready. I felt a chill as the thud reverberated through my bones. I stepped back from the door, the stone heavy in my hand, pulsing with an energy that both calmed and unsettled me. I needed to find answers. but I was stuck in this cabin, the walls closing in around me. I glanced toward the window, hoping to catch sight of whatever was out there. The darkness outside was a thick blanket, smothering even the soft glow from the stars above. Suddenly, the growl sounded again, closer and more menacing. It rumbled from the other side of the door, almost as if it were taunting me. Time to think. My eyes darted around the room. The fire still crackled in the hearth, its glow dimming as the logs burned low. I had to act fast. I noticed an old rusty axe propped against the fireplace. For a moment, I hesitated, torn between the urgency of my situation and the gnawing fear creeping into the corners of my mind. Another thud. The door shuddered in its frame. My heart raced, driven by primal instinct. I grabbed the axe and felt its weight settle in my hands. It was a physical reassurance, a connection back to reality in the midst of the chaos. Then I remembered the stone. I glanced at it, still clasped tightly in my palm. What did those markings mean? I desperately wished I had a flashlight or something to shed light on the mystery, but all I had was the implied promise of protection from this strange object. I took a deep breath and moved cautiously to the window, lifting the heavy curtain ever so slightly, hoping for clarity. The fog had thickened, swallowing the ground whole. The eerie silence pressed against my ears, and my pulse quickened as I squinted into the murky shadows. That's when I saw it, a dark shape lurking near the edge of the clearing just beyond the reach of the cabin's light. I couldn't make out its features, but I could see its eyes, glimmering like shards of ice in the night. They locked onto me, a predatory stare that made my skin prickle. This was it. Whatever that figure had been, its presence was confirmed. My hand tightened around the axe as fear slithered up my spine. I had to keep my wits about me. Suddenly the growling intensified, echoing from the door as it rattled hard this time. The creature was impatient. I stepped back, careful not to make a sound. My instinct screamed at me to run out the back, but my curiosity gnawed at me. What did it want? Then with a forceful crash, the door burst open. The darkness spilled into the room like a living thing, and I was momentarily blinded. I hefted the axe above my head, ready to defend myself. My heart thundered in my chest. And then I saw it emerge, a twisted shape, half human, half something else, with those same swirling patterns I had seen before. My breath caught in my throat. What was this creature? I had to know. But more importantly, would it harm me? Before I could act, it lunged toward me and everything went dark. I awoke with a start, the taste of soil filling my mouth. Confusion gripped me as I tried to push myself up, my body aching. I blinked against the dim light, struggling to recall what had happened. The creature. The door. Where was I? I was no longer in the cabin. Instead, I lay on cool, damp ground. Panic surged through me as I looked around, taking in the dense forest that surrounded me. Trees loomed overhead like shadows, their branches entwined like fingers. The night air felt thick and heavy. I scrambled to my feet, quickly scanning my surroundings. There was no sign of the cabin, no familiar comforts, just the oppressive weight of the forest closing in. The stone still clutched tightly in my hand, a small flicker of reassurance. But it was a flicker overshadowed by dread. Footsteps. I froze, heart racing, listening intently. The noise came again, a soft crunch of leaves combined with a low growl. My pulse quickened. I had to decide. I could either run or find something to defend myself. The axe. I looked down, but my grip on the stone was all I had. The axe must have been lost in the whirlwind of the creature's attack. I took a deep breath. There was no time for despair. I had to keep moving before that growl became something more. I turned and darted deeper into the trees, knowing they would offer some cover. Branches scraped at my arms as I pushed through the underbrush. The growl echoed behind me, closer now. Each step felt like a battle against both the ground and my own fear. I stumbled but kept going. I had no choice. Frantically, I searched for anything that could help. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being hunted. I could feel those icy eyes watching me, waiting to pounce. Then I spotted it, a faint glow ahead, like a flicker of hope in the dark. My heart raced as I moved toward it, pushing aside the thick branches. When I broke through, What lay before me astonished me. A clearing filled with small, glowing stones scattered across the ground. They pulsed with the same energy I had felt from the stone in my hand. What was this place? I hesitated, my instincts raging inside. This could be a trap, or worse. I glanced back, the growl still lingering behind me. I didn't have much time left. Gathering courage, I stepped into the clearing. The stones vibrated gently beneath my feet, sending little shudders through my legs. I knelt to inspect one of the glowing stones, the markings on it strikingly familiar. Suddenly, the growl transformed into a howl that echoed through the trees. I jolted upright, fear surging as I turned. There, at the edge of the clearing, the creature stood, silhouetted against the forest, those icy eyes boring into me with a blend of hunger and something else. I realized it was trying to communicate. My grip on the stone tightened as a beam of light shot from it, illuminating the clearing. The creature flinched, but didn't retreat. And that was when the stones responded. They began to vibrate more fiercely and the air hummed with energy. I felt a connection, one that tugged at the very core of me. Then, as if an unseen force was pulling me, I stepped forward. The creature mirrored my movement, its eyes still locked onto mine, full of urgency and need. "I don't understand," I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. The howl became a resonant chorus, echoing through the trees. I was caught between two worlds, and I had to figure out which one I belonged to before it was too late. The creature crouched at the edge of the clearing, muscles tense, ready to leap. My breath hitched as I felt the ground vibrate beneath me, the glowing stones pulsating in sync. They were alive, but did they mean to help? Or were they merely amplifying the creature's power? "Stay back!" I shouted, raising the stone in my hand. But I felt more like a child wielding a toy than someone in control of my fate. The creature's eyes softened briefly as it tilted its head. Then, it moved, darting closer. I stumbled backward, fear flooding through me. I had no plan, no understanding of what was happening. The howl resonated once more, a sound of longing, not just hunger. It struck a chord within me. "Please," I cried out, my voice shaking. "I want to help you." In that moment, everything around me changed. The glow of the stones intensified, illuminating the clearing in a brilliant light. The creature paused, its eyes still locked on mine. The howls transformed into a chorus of whispers, indistinct, yet clear in their intent. I couldn't tell what they were saying, but the urgency pressed against me like the weight of the forest's darkness. Then, a singular voice cut through the chaos, clear and resonant, rising from the stones and echoing in my mind. "Protect the heart." "What heart?" I gasped, looking around desperately. But just as quickly as the voice had appeared, it faded, leaving me even more confused. I glanced back at the creature, which now seemed less threatening and more vulnerable. A sudden wave of compassion washed over me. "You need something from me," I said softly. The sound of my voice, steadied by an unfamiliar resolve, broke the tension. The creature stepped forward, its eyes wide with something akin to hope. I clenched the stone tighter. It was already glowing with energy, but I felt I could do more. I closed my eyes, recalling the warmth and light that had cracked through the darkness when I first found it. "Show me," I whispered. The stones trembled beneath my feet, and for a brief moment, I felt their energy course through me. Images flashed in my mind, vivid peaks of crystal and shadows of trees, a pulse that beat like the rhythm of life itself. I saw glimpses of the forest in balance, a world where the creature thrived, unharmed. But then a darkness loomed, a presence stalking the edges of the vision, threatening to swallow everything. "Stop it!" I shouted, panic gripping me again. "What do I need to do?" The creature let out a low growl, and suddenly I understood. It wasn't just looking for safety. It wanted me to join its fight against whatever evil threatened this realm. My heart raced, torn between instinct and resolve. As the growl echoed again, deeper, more ominous, I dared a glance back into the trees. A swirling darkness emerged, shifting and reshaping, as if the forest itself was being consumed. I had to decide, join this creature and protect what lay ahead, or run again into the darkness behind me. Before I could think, I shouted, "Let's stop it together." The creature responded with a fierce howl. The stones vibrated violently as the light glowed brighter, and I felt myself drawn into their energy as the encroaching darkness began to close in. And then everything went dark. I woke up again, but this time the air felt different. It buzzed with electricity, and there was no cold ground beneath me, only warmth. I opened my eyes and found myself in a vast, radiant space, filled with brilliant colors swirling like paint in water. The light surrounded me, warm and inviting. I panicked for a moment, wondering if this was another dream, or if I had succumbed to whatever darkness that had hunted me. "Jenna," a voice echoed, familiar yet ethereal, resonating like a soft melody. I turned to see the figure. Only it didn't look twisted or sinister. It stood before me now, revealing itself as something magnificent, an amalgamation of light and shadow, familiar in its essence but entirely otherworldly. Where is this?" I managed to ask, for my voice felt small in the expanse of wonder around us. "This is the space between," the figure replied gently, its glowing eyes softening. "You chose to confront the darkness. Now you must embrace the light." "What darkness?" I pressed. "I don't understand. What do you need me to do?" It gestured to the horizon where colors flowed together. "The heart of this realm is under threat. You have the means to protect it. The stone you carry is a beacon of balance, a key." I looked down at my palm, where the stone pulsed softly, sensing the power held within. But how can I help? I felt the weight of responsibility press down upon me. "You must channel your creativity and understanding. With your art, you can reveal the truth and defend against the encroaching shadows. The heart seeks a keeper," it explained, drawing nearer. Images flashed in my mind, the glow of the woods, the shadows moving, the fear in the creature's eyes. The heart? Is it the glowing stones, the woods, or something deeper? The figure paused, its eyes shimmering with recognition. "It is the essence of this space. It thrives and vibrates with life, but it can only endure if nurtured. The darkness consumes, but you can shift the balance." I thought about the forest, the creature, the beauty and chaos of it all. I had witnessed its vulnerability, felt its heartbeat beneath the weight of shadows. I tightened my grip on the stone. "Then I will protect it. But what if I fail?" The figure extended a hand, a pulse of light radiating from it. "There is strength in vulnerability. Failure is but a lesson. Trust your instincts as you have long embraced your art. The realm needs both of you. You must unite." With a newfound resolve, I nodded. The figure stepped back, the light cascading around it, and in that moment, clarity flooded through me. Focusing on the stone, I began to draw in the air, swirling lines that burst forth with energy. The colors radiated, forming landscapes, creatures, and the spirit of the forest itself. I felt the brush of the past and present intertwining, capturing the essence of hope and protection. As I drew, the colors flared brighter, and the darkness lurking at the edge of existence shrank back. Shadows twisted and writhed, their growls turning into cries, as if they could feel the power gathering around me. The heart pulsed in response, the stones illuminated, the ground vibrating with my creation. Suddenly, the darkness coalesced into familiar forms, twisted figures of malice that charged toward me. "You cannot protect this place," they screeched, their monstrous voices echoing through the twilight. "Watch me," I whispered, channeling every ounce of strength into my drawing. Each stroke became a barrier, where the light mingled with my intuition and artistry. The figures recoiled, momentarily halted by my resolve. A sliver of doubt tugged at me. Was this enough? What if their darkness was stronger than my light? The figure reappeared beside me, radiating confidence. "Believe, Jenna. This is your truth." With that affirmation, I pushed forward, constructing barriers of brilliance to shield the heart. My strokes danced through the air, encasing the heart in a web of light. The darkness writhed, but it could not break through the strength of what I had created. And then it all coalesced. A burst of energy exploded forth, a shockwave of light that reverberated through the realm. The dark figures wailed, their forms dissipating like mist in the wind. For a brief moment, silence enveloped the space. As the echoes faded, I breathed deeply, grounded by the silence that stretched on. The heart became a glowing beacon, emanating vibrant colors that danced through the trees. The beauty felt palpable, a reminder of the coexistence of light and dark. But even as the threat receded, I knew the story was far from over. Glancing toward the figure, I felt a swell of questions rise yet again. Would the darkness always loom? Would this realm remain safe? I sighed as uncertainty filled the space where fear once lingered. I don't know what happens next, I murmured. The figure smiled softly. And that is part of your journey. Continue to create, Jenna. Threads of light reside in every story, waiting to be woven into reality. With those words, it began to fade, the colors blending away like morning mist. Alone again, I stood in the radiant clearing, clutching the stone, aware that my path remained uncertain. I looked back at the forest, knowing the story was ongoing, one where the balance between light and dark intertwined like the strands of fate. I took a step forward into the woods, the glow illuminating my path. What lay ahead remained enigmatic, and as I continued toward the heart of the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling something was still watching, weaving its own story just beyond the realm of my understanding. I moved ahead, embracing the blend of light and shadow around me, ready to write whatever tale awaited next.